primitive secret of the Arctic, the forgotten legend. It's very characteristic that a whole group of very recent researchers on prehistory, ancient ideas, which until recently were considered simple myths and legends, are reappearing. One of these ideas refers to the primitive legendary country of Hyperborea, the far north, the Arctic. We know that Plato had a lot of writing concerning Hyperborea, and that the ancient Greeks had reached up there, the area of the white wolves. There's only one place that you find white wolves, and that's in the Arctic, Hyperborea. And from also the reading of the Emerald Tablets and the Atlanteans, concerning the Atlanteans, written by Thoth the Atlantean. And we also know that from Hyperborea, we have something that came from the Atlanteans by way of an Atlantean or extraterrestrial that brought the lightning rod of Zeus to be given to Alexander the Great, and that lightning rod copy is found in a Nepal Buddhist monastery even to this day. The generals of Alexander the Great are reported to have buried the actual lightning rod of Zeus very carefully to conceal it, but a copy is found in the Nepal Buddhist monastery. Now, with great reservations about the presumed certainty that only a mortal humanity has lived in prehistory, having today recalled this idea, we come to the problem of origin with new and incomprehensible view of various researchers as a working hypothesis, as a symbolic spiritual reality to achieve a great historical composition. We conclude that even the Stone Age witnesses a genuine superior culture. The original homeland of the prehistoric white race, highly civilized, so much so that it was considered divine by the ancients, would indeed be the Arctic, the North Pole, the mythical transcendence. The paradoxical appearance of this argument disappears as soon as we remember what physics teaches us about the phenomena that comes from the so-called equinox transition. Due to the inclination of the Earth's axis from time to time, a change in the Earth's climate is produced. As fossilized carbon has been discovered beneath polar ice, this means that at one time or another, there were forests and fires in this area. Cooling did not affect the Arctic until later. One of the names of Asgard, home of the gods, and home of the northern royal families, is according to the Scandinavian tradition legends of a green island or Greenland. In modern German Grünsland, from where Greenland comes from. The name of Greenland, Grünsland, was one time green. But this land, as its name suggests, even until the Gothic years, seemed to have had a very rich vegetation and had not yet been paid in full from the freezer. But there is more. In the Arctic ice region, recent missions by Canadian Jens, Danish Rasmussen and Thurkel, and the American Burkitt Smith have indeed produced unique archaeological finds. In the background, underground below the ice, remnants of a much higher culture have been found. What that of the Eskimos and remnants of even more ancient prehistoric strata. This culture has been given the name of the culture of the dome culture. Thule. Thule is a name given by the Greeks, tholos meaning dome, precisely in an area or on an island in the far north, which is often confused with the lands of the North Mountains, and where they believe that Apollo will come from. That is the god of the Doric Achaean tribes, who indeed say they came down from the north to Greece, that is from Hyperborea towards Greece. Plutarch, the ancient Greek, says of Thule, or the dome, that in it for about a month the night lasted only 2 hours. It is the white night of the northern countries, because other Greek traditions call the Arctic Sea the Crown Sea, and its important indication, as Saturn was perceived as one of the gods of the Golden Age, the Primordial Age, the first age of mankind. Now, if we go to America, to the cultures of the Aztecs of Mexico, we'll find correspondences so unique that they eventually extend to the names, and indeed the ancient Mexicans called their ancestral homeland Tulan, and also Tula, the Greek Thule, or Tlapalan, Tula, and Tul. And just as Greeks were associated with the sun Apollo, so here the Mexican Tula was considered the house of the sun. But let's compare these Mexican traditions with those of the Celts, or the Celts. If the distant ancestors of the Mexicans came to America from a North Atlantic land, here are the Irish legends about the divine race of the Tuathan or Danann, who came to Ireland from the west by a secret Atlantic or North Atlantic land called Avalon. We therefore say two forms of the same memory. The two cultures correspond to two light beams, okay? Two light beams, one American and the other European, coming from a single center, from a missing location, the myth of Atlantis, let's say, or something from an ice age or some frozen area, like the Arctic. But there is more to it, in the sense that if we go into the realm of modern positive research, we'll find elements that could well agree with these resonances of legends. In fact, on the European coast of the Atlantic, mainly in the so-called Magdalenian civilization, there are clear traces of an authentic civilization and a type of humanity, the so-called Cromagnon man, which shows a much higher evolution than the almost animalistic races, the then residents of Europe, who were called Iceman or Mustard Man. The surviving fragments of this civilization are of such a nature that they allow researchers to claim that the Cro-Magnons may well be called the Greeks of the Stone Age. Once upon a time, this Cro-Magnon breed mysteriously appeared during the Stone Age along the coastal Atlantic between the lower and almost deep races, and it could not be perhaps the same as a Tuatha de Danann, with the divine race that came from the mysterious North Atlantic, the Hyperborea region, that of the Irish legends. And the myths about the struggles between the divine races that suddenly rose and the races of the demons or monsters could not be interpreted perhaps as imaginary echoes of the great struggle that took place between these two races, between the people of Cro-Magnon and the quote-unquote Greeks of the Stone Age and the living mustard people. And going back to traditional memories, it's not just Greeks and Americans who remembered a primitive Arctic cradle. According to Avesta's Iranian memoirs, the original and secret homeland of the Aryans, perceived as the first creation of the god of light, the Arianum, was a country in the far north, and is still called that in it. When winter begins, it lasts for 10 months of the year, just like in the Arctic. Therefore, it's a very accurate memory of glaciers, as happened with the transition of equinoxes in the Arctic, a memory that, however, matches the terrible winter of Fibul, which is released at the end of the certain cycle or of the world as described in the ancient Scandinavian traditions, the terrible winter of Fibul, F-I-B-U-L. But even in India, they remember an island or land of light located in the far north, the Sveta Dvipa, or White Island, or Brilliant Island, and a tribe in the far north, the Uttara, or Kura, the Uttara Kura. The same memory they have in Tibet, the myth of the secret city of the north, Sambala. Just remember in Tibet, in the Nepal monasteries where they have the lightning rod of Zeus, a copy of it, that was given by an Atlantean of Hyperborea, brought to Alexander the Great for his use against his enemies to conquer the world towards the east. Now, in the Far East, Liège tells the story of a land located in the northernmost parts of the North Sea and inhabited by transcendental people, quote unquote. So we could go on with a number of other references to consider what we wonder if the presence of the common theme between peoples so different and distant from each other is not just coincidence or luck. It must mean that they knew that some special kind of people were living there. So far, however, the traditional memories, it's precisely these ideas that have been incorporated today into a truly mastodonistic or mammoth scientific study, which brings forth general complex of findings and special research such as those of Frobenius, Hermann, the Stone Age, etc. Its purpose is to strengthen the issue of common origin. We intend to talk about the work inaugurated by the scientist Hermann Wirth in Dawn of Humanity, speech play on the title of Wirth's first work, Der Aufgang der Menschheit, published 1928. And we're not dealing with a theosophist or imaginary amateur, but with a technician whose expertise in philology, anthropology, paleogeography, and related fields cannot really be disputed. In short, the results of Wirth's research are exactly this, that in ancient prehistory, about 20,000 BC, or that's 22,000 years ago, a large united white race worshipped by the sun moved from the polar regions that became uninhabited due to glaciers to the south, in Europe and America, but especially in an extinct land in the area of North Atlantic. It then moved from this land during the Paleolithic period to Europe and Africa with a movement from east to west. It will then penetrate the Mediterranean basin, creating a cycle of prehistoric cultures closely intertwined, which will be shaped into Egyptian, Etruscan, Pelasgian, etc., so as not to say anything about the many others which will be founded by new waves against their route from the mainland, eventually reaching the Caucasus and beyond to India and even China itself. So what is supposed to be the cradle of humanity, the Pamir Plateau, would only be one of the fairly recent radiation centers of a much more ancient race. The Aryan and Indo-Germanic tribes, and in general the European man, Homo europaeus, are already productive and descending tribes, and to some extent already mixed compared to the older and purer factions of the overseas to which the memories and symbols refer, even prehistoric petroglyphs about, quote, foreign conquerors with large boats, the sun and the solar man with his raised arms, end quote. A mysterious unit thus encompasses a group of great civilizations and ancient religions which flourished where the animal man of the cave supposedly lived until yesterday. In short, this is a strange and fascinating concept that passed through the world of myth, now returns to the light. The Arctic is the homeland of humanity as well as culture, in the highest sense of the word solar, the sun, from the sun. And once a symbol, it became a symbol again, finally remembering that. Even in Roman times, the idea of the northern region as a secret country inhabited by the father of the gods, quote unquote, the god of the first age or the golden age, and the idea that the Arctic day, almost without night, was not irrelevant with the eternal light surrounding the immortals. These ideas in Roman times were still so vivid that, according to the testimony of Eumantius, bishop of Volterra, in Tuscany, Italy, Constantinus Chlorus would lead a campaign in the north part of Britain associated with the legendary Thule itself, not so much out of a desire for military glory, but to reach the earth, quote, which is more than any other near heaven, end quote, as this area almost felt the divine transformation that heroes and emperors underwent when they died. Now, these same areas, which saw the dawn of humanity, contain and preserve the mystery of a primitive race of white conquerors whose symbol, the axe, reappears in every Roman symbol of the stick. These northern regions of Ireland, from Iceland to Greenland and North America, are the same ones over which the Italian wings flew victoriously yesterday, in an operation where, regardless of price, it really wanted to be enigmatically linked to the positions of a primordial greatness. This is via The Secret Truth, yelada.gr, and I've translated this from Greek from an article on Diadrastika. Please tell me what you think with your comments. Thank you so much. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.